I want to welcome you to the Charly Crawford podcast. Let's ride.
Richie, what's up, my man? Good to see you, buddy.
Good to see you, Charlie.
You've been keeping up with the crossfire. You've been keeping up with what's going on social media with all the hoopla on where they're letting them throw. I know Austin, man, it really looked like after that they started cracking down. Then I heard San Angelo starting to maybe going back to where it used to be. What's your thoughts on what you've been seeing back there?
You know, to me, it's like everything, the steers are dictating everything. You know, the steers cost so much. You know, like at Austin, the steers was real old, slow. And, you know, and everything's changed. I mean, all the kids rope fast now, they rope good. And the steers dictate there. I mean, if you're not 3, 4, you know, 4 don't even come close anymore. So it's like, you know, the steers are dictating it like at Austin. And then I think, you know, but I mean, on like the 2-9, I mean, you knew it was going to happen sooner or later. But, you know, I mean, he roped him fast, but I really don't think it was just a blatant crossfire. It was just a, you know, I mean, it was a darn good run. It's about as close as you can be to be 2-9.
Talk a little bit about what you're saying too, because that's where I think that there's so much misunderstanding about the crossfire. Because I think if you just try to put a blanket statement on there, it doesn't go into detail on what makes it hard to judge, because there's so much to do with the cattle.
Well, it's so much that, you know, like you went to San Angelo and steers was fresh, you know, and a lot fresher. To me, is a lot easier to call a crossfire. You know, to me, when you go to Austin, the steer dictates it so much. And if, you know, I think sometimes where they get in trouble is some of the flaggers don't really realize the difference between if you're plumb cheating or the steer caused it, you know, and it just, you know, it's one of them deals that, you know, it's, you know, the times have changed, the ropes are better, horses are better, everything's faster. So, you know, when the steers dictate it, there's not a lot you can do about it.
I think that's probably the best explanation I've heard, is the fact of, you know, like we talked about, like at Austin, steers are older. That's when it gets real tricky.
Right.
Because when you're talking about fresher, they're staying straighter. They're easier to read, easier to flag, easier to see when the crossfire is coming. But when you got ones that are checking off, running the rope, you know, all those things, to where there's times where you're pulling off a shot because the steer is tricky. And then there's times where that steer, when he hits and switches into it, where it's an obvious one.
Right.
You know, the ones that check off, to me, those are the ones that hit cleanest, the fastest, where you can tee off on them.
Right.
And then the hardest ones is when the steer, when he ropes and he rolls, and then they say, well, the steer never hit, but it's like, well, he's never going to, because he's almost just running the rope.
Right.
So that makes, those are two things that makes it very difficult if you don't know cattle. And if you don't have that, in my opinion, clearly stated in the rules.
Right. You know, but that's one of them deals that it don't matter. You can put it in the rules, you can do this, but it's still going to come down to a judgment call. You know, and when, like say, you know, it's like, and nowadays, if you don't throw there and make them make the call, you're not going to win nothing.
Yeah.
So,
but it looked like at Angelo, they're starting to tighten up and maybe going back to how it was, is what it sounded like to me.
You know, like at Angelo, but it's also way easier, you know, when we roped in the Spur Arena out there, had two, you know, like the steers, the score was longer, steers was better, and you could actually see it out in front of you what was happening. And, you know, you got to put yourself in the flagger situations. You know, a lot of these guys, you know, a lot of them rope, a lot of them don't rope. But, you know, it's like when you're put like in their situation and it happens so fast, and they have a split second to make a call. You know, to me, they either need to maybe, you know, like, I mean, nowadays everything's on film. Go and watch instant replay, do something, and then don't flag them out right there. All right, when we get done, we're going to go back, we're going to look at it, we got your time, and then let's make the call.
Yeah.
Then you can be so it can be a lot more professional.
Especially with the technology we have these days.
Exactly.
It's not like when we watch a football game and the judgment call, and then when they challenge the call, they go in there, look at it, and then it's not like the fans don't care.
No.
They're waiting to see it actually hold suspension,
Right.
or suspense of the game to where it's like, okay, is he going to get the call or is he not?
Not going to get the call.
Yeah, so it's totally updating, I think, what you're saying with what every other sport's already doing.
Right.
And that would take off so much pressure off the flaggers.
Off the flaggers and off everybody.
Yeah.
I mean, then if you throw and they switch into it, it's no time. But steer checks off and he comes under you and you heal him, and they see it's a good shot. Let it happen.
Yeah.
I mean,
let a healer pull off a good shot on a hard steer as opposed to, like a lot of guys are saying, cheating, throwing too early.
Right.
Because I thought Walt brought up a really good point when we had him on the podcast. You never crossfired. You was always the right place, the right time. One of the most consistent healers to ever play the game. Jade, you never see them getting flagged out.
Right.
Junior, you never see getting flagged out. And it's not like we know he can't.
Right.
But he knows where the shot is.
But to me, that all goes back to who's up front. Driggers knows how to get it on them, put them on the end of it, make them legal quick. And, Speedy was really good at that. So it's all, and then after you run that many steers with somebody and like I tell everybody, I roped where they was going, not where they're at. So when them guys stick it on them and make them put their feet together, you can throw so fast, and it's so easy. Because you've run thousands of them, not only at home but in competition.
Talk a little bit about too. We're talking about partners. Been a lot of partner switching going on. Once I think Austin started, a lot of different partner swaps going on. I know Kobe Payne's back with Clay Smith. Looks like T Wade's going to slow down, stay around here. Thorpe and Tanner Tomlinson, and then it left Levi Lord
kind of out on his own,
and looks like he just picked up James Arviso.
Right.
That's gonna be a pretty good team.
I think that's a really good team. You got to put yourself in some of their situations, like Levi and his man. That they're going to be a good team because neither one of them's champion. No, never won a championship. They're hungry. They're rope good. Have good horses. And then I don't care what happens after you've roped for a while and you've won a championship or two. I remember after I won the first one, then it kind of, it's you want to win another one, but if it doesn't work out, it's not the end of the world. And I remember before I won one, and I remember my wife was passing her clothes when she'd come back from the NFR. From the perf in the afternoon when didn't win, and when you put so much into it, I was ready to go home. It didn't work out, and you're just,
hungry.
You're hungry. You're ready to get home. You're tired. Been out there 10 days. You worked all year. Didn't work out. But then on the other hand, when it worked out, it's so satisfying.
Yeah. Another team right now that looks to me hungry and that just paired up is you got Tyler Tryon and Nikki Northcott, two young kids. But talk a little bit about those two, because you talk about young kids, but man, they sure have seen a lot because of where their dads were, what they've already seen before their time in a way.
Right, and that makes a big difference. When you can call home and Clay tells you, you missed a barrier, you're not riding your horse across the line, your swings, you can actually trust him because he's been there and done it. And
Nikki Northcott.
Nikki Northcott's dad's the same way, world champion, and it's all about, if he tells you, well, you're going by the steers, or you got to get more to the inside, or they know what they're talking about, and it's then they have some credentials.
I tell you what, that I've seen some hungry heading before, but that Tyler Tryon at the BFI was
unreal.
Wow. For the first 4 or 5 steers, I don't think he started letting off till maybe 5th round, because they had so much, almost a leg lead.
Right.
Going into the 5th round, and then short round had to be 13.
Right.
I've never seen a runaway on the BFI like that before. That's wild.
Well, it's the crazy thing is heading nowadays, them guys, they go to over here to Tees Arena, and you see it daily. I mean, you see tail around in the gates, and they're 5. I mean, they drop 2 coils. But what amazes me is how consistent they are with it. You know,
Consistent and controlled.
yeah, they can actually handle the steers doing that. And I'm not sure though. Nowadays, with the way the steers are smaller, it's not easier to handle them on a little more rope.
Yeah.
Especially if they're patient in the corner and come back.
I 100% agree with that, because like for me, I had running head horses,
Right.
and when you would come running in there that strong and rope, and then them horses have to collect and match those little steers,
Right.
it was almost harder not to drift down the pin.
Exactly.
Where a lot of them horses now are almost just a little bit faster than the steer, but they're able to use their rope to get to them, but they're not so much gap between how faster the horse is outrunning the steer. They're
Right.
using more of their rope where then they can feather them around, and that horse ain't hauling butt near as much.
Right.
And I think there is a lot to that where they can feather them things around the corner without having all that momentum coming in.
I see that all the time, and
Yeah.
you know, I think you're 100% right on that one.
Yeah,
Because them steers
it's
are
wild.
just, yeah.
It's gotten so fast over there at 377. I mean,
Yeah.
I went over there and watched, and I mean, 2 coils in round 1.
Yeah, it's first round.
And
Uh,
if you're
oh.
7, you better come back and be a couple 5s to make up for it.
Yes. To even have it to win 4th.
And you better be a 4 in there to have a chance to place.
Yeah. It's pretty crazy, you know, and how everything's changed and
Yeah.
all that. So
Well, I'd love to go over your career, where you got started up there in Electra, Texas. I mean, Hall of Fame from 2018, you got inducted in the Pro Rodeo Hall of Fame. 22 times at the NFR on the heel side. 1 time you made it in the Steer Open too, correct?
correct. Yeah.
And then, but the iconic 8 consecutive world titles is, I don't think, can ever be matched. That was just such a time where when that happened, it was amazing to watch it in real time.
Right.
But I just don't think it could happen again. Sometimes for a lot of guys, making the NFR 8 times in a row is hard enough, but then to be the best in the world 8 times was just unbelievable.
Right. You know, it all goes on the championship part of it. To me, it all goes back to what Speed and I. You know, we didn't have any children at the time. He had 2 great head horses. He had, you know, and I had Roni and Chili Dog. And every morning when we got up, that's what we thought about. I mean, we got up, we thought about we was either practicing, or we was going to a roping, or we was going to a school. But all we thought about was trying to win a championship and what we had to do it. And to me, it's a lot of I've got to give Speed a lot of credit, not only for the heading, is him thinking outside of the box. I mean, you know, first time we went to the NFR, we roped, and we Quattro Lat brought us a stock trailer full of muleys, and they'd never been touched. I mean, just off the wheat field, and we roped, and we made us like a arena size NFR, but we didn't know what we was doing. So we go to town. We bought a bunch of snow fence, you know, that orange snow fence. We put her down through there. We spent more time. If I missed, they went right through the fence, and we spent more time fixing fence than we ever did running steers. Then we had to figure out we had to get panels. So that's about the time the panels started. So it was quite interesting on some of the stuff. But you know, I roped terrible for 2-3 days. You know, in my whole career, I've had to work at keeping speed on my rope. I mean, that's one of the things I had to work at. And so, come to, you know, and I had old steers where we roped, and my horses were slowed down, my swing was slowed down, because I mean, it's old Mexican steers. I didn't lose no money on them. That's what I practiced on. Then when Speed and I started, he taught me into doing roping the muleys, and it got my swing sped up. It got my horse's foot speed sped up. It, you know, made everything better. But other than my confidence the first 2 days, and then after about the 3rd day, everything started clicking, going into play, and it started working. And then when I did get to Vegas that year, and we roped Max older Mexican steers, it was like shooting fish in a barrel, because everything was, I was ahead of all the ball game.
So one thing I would say about Speedy was you're talking about thinking outside the box. It seemed like he always made practice harder than competition.
Oh, he did.
And in that way, when you got the competition, it was almost like you said, shooting ducks in a barrel.
Exactly. And yeah, and that's what he was good at, you know, and a lot of time too, you know, like I think headers, you know, to me watching him, they rope. Everybody used to, and he's the only guy that I ever really roped to that didn't do this. He did the whole time, probably 10, 12 years. He turned me maybe, as he'd say, full contact, 8 or 10 steers, maybe two before we went to NFR on Viper. He'd call it full contact. He didn't practice on his horses. He'd rope, work on them, and then I would show up that night. He had practice horses and turned me steers. You know, them horses, it's hard. They get enough runs and in competition when they're in competition and everything. You know, and he was very, you know, very adamant about not, you know, running a lot of steers full contact on his horses. And I think that's why they lasted a lot longer.
Longevity.
Uh-huh.
I remember you talk about thinking outside the box too, because he did so many things so much differently than everyone else. And I remember we all heard about Speedy, and you guys were showing up, and I was still on my way up from my permit to my rookie year. And I remember, I think at Ellensburg, he turned around opposite of the steer. You know, when we grew up, you always turn toward the steer.
Towards the steer. Oh, yeah.
Why? I've got no idea to this time whatsoever. That was tradition.
Oh, yeah.
And then he showed up and turned the other way, and everyone's like, oh. I mean, I remembered it.
Did you see that?
Oh, yeah. And they're like, he doesn't even know which way to turn in the box.
Yeah.
And even to this point, I remember that point, I'm like, I still never understood why we had to turn toward the steer.
Right. I know.
But there's just little things like that
yeah.
that he wasn't scared to think against the grain to be able to do something different that hasn't been done before. And then turns out
he was good at turning. He was good at turning left.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll talk a little bit about when you started. So coming up from Electra, when you got started roping, and we'll talk a little bit about when you started getting your card and who you started roping with as your way on your way up.
You know, when I first started, you know, it's crazy. I mean, some people want to be a fireman, some people want to be a police officer. I knew the whole time I wanted to rope. And
what created that? Did your parents?
No, I mean, not really. My dad had the second largest carpet store in Dallas for 10 years. And we moved back to Electra when I was in the second grade. And when he was in the second grade, and they had a roping every Tuesday and Friday night right over there by my house. And I'd go rope over there. You know, when I got old enough, I started roping, and it was just one of those deals that I knew that's what I wanted to do. And there was another man up there named Gary Jacobs, helped me a lot. He lived in Vernon, and I would go rope with him, you know. But you know what? There was a guy named Jack Blevins. He's a really, really nice guy. He got up every morning, left at 5:00. He went to he's in the oil field, and he'd have 3 or 4 horses, and he would come home, and I'd get home, and he'd come every night, and he'd turn me steers. And he'd rope about 8 or 10 steers, and then he'd get tired, and then he'd get to missing. So he'd just put it on the chute and turn them for me all night. And you know, you got to have guys like that he was wanting to help, wanting to teach me how to heel. And now, you know, back then, everything's changed. You know, back then there was no healers. I mean, Gary Knox was up there. He was the only guy that I knew that, I mean, he could catch 2 feet. And in the whole world there was not that many good healers. And then so I was at a roping one time at White City, Texas, out by Vernon, and as a saddle roping, I was first and second high team. I was heading, and I did, you know, I thought pretty decent. Turned both steers. One guy missed. One guy roped both front feet, and I was like, you know what, I can do that. I can do that good. So I went home and I started practicing that night, and had no luck. I mean, I roped terrible. And back then, the NFR was in Oklahoma City. And there was a man named Johnny Woods over there, had an indoor arena in Lawton. And Gerald and Leo would come stay with him. Actually, Walt Woodard started, would go stay with him when I come back here. And they showed me, like, you know, I'd go over there, and he had helped, they had helped him. So he kind of got me started. And then Walt never helped me, but Gerald, he come about that time to the NFR, and he kind of helped me and kind of showed me how to get going. And I remember I went to 2 or 3 schools, and Gerald helped me quite a bit. And I tell you, there was another guy named Joel Maker from Oklahoma. I watched him rope. He was tremendous, and he helped me a lot. And I just watched, you know, I took 2 or 3 different styles and put everything together. And we, like I rope pretty darn good, but I didn't rope good enough. So I had to, I tried it, went out and rodeoed some, and just, I could tell it wasn't right. So I went and actually lived with Charles and Bill Pogue for, I don't know, maybe 6 months, eight.
They're in Ringling.
In
Isn't that where
Ringland.
they're from?
And
Oklahoma.
we would rope. Charles was going to college, but what we'd do is I'd get up every morning and rope sawhorse for an hour, hour and a half. Then Bill would come in from work, and he had one of the first pulled dummies. I mean, it was like, and he used a pickup, and he'd pull the dummy and watch me rope in the mirror, and and then he would help me, and then Charles would come in from school, and we'd rope 80, 100 steers a night. And we didn't just rope them. Like, he filmed, we roped, and we would rope a steer and we'd talk about it. We wouldn't just, to me, that's the biggest difference that I see with the way people practice nowadays. Somebody comes in from work or school, and they would come in, and it gets dark at 5:30, and they get in at 4:45, and they throw their saddles on their horse, run 15, 20 steers, and think they got a good practice. I mean, I think you have to learn how to practice. And they didn't, and we worked at the roping. I mean, we didn't go nowhere. There was one roping up in Oklahoma there, and at Velma, I think it was. And Charles and I, we went 6 weeks, and we won it 4 times. And that's the only roping I went to. And then I'm pretty sure when I left that year, that's when I made the NFR. But I mean, I roped good enough just to get my butt kicked. So I had to regroup, start over, and then change my riding, my left hand, my swing, changed everything. And then I was ready.
Because that was before a blueprint was kind of starting to get presented. Guys were still, Leo had it figured out, but, to be able to explain it was very hard. And then there was also that time, too, where that era didn't really want to leak out a whole lot of information, because when they had the edge, they want to keep it. So there's so many guys that got started in your era and the guys before that, they had to figure it out on their own.
Oh, yeah.
And I think the heeling, in my opinion, I think the heading's easiest to learn how to do. I feel like the heeling's the hardest to learn how to do.
Right.
Then I think once you hit a certain level, then it switches.
Right.
Then heading gets very, very sophisticated on the start, and that's when you get your swing up and where you handle the steer. But, as you're talking about trying to learn how to get the swing right, trying to find position, trying to read where the steer's at, and then now we're going to have to try to find timing. What was it through that evolution that you started getting to where it started slowing down and you started getting the hang of it?
Right about then. I mean, because we would rope, like, say, we would talk about like the corner, how if I got too close, too far, and I started figuring out how to read the steers. And if you're looking at the feet going down the arena, you don't know it, but you're automatically using your left hand. And I started having to learn how to ride. Bill showed me how to ride the same position over and over. And like, he was left-handed, but the first time I made the NFR, I rode his heel horse. It's the same deal. You still got to get around them.
So when you started roping with Charles, I guess probably high school, college, and through that area, and then started getting your card. Who was some of the guys you started roping with? Was it just Charles throughout then, or who was some of the partners you had as you started progressing in your roping?
Actually, one of the first guys I went to a pro rodeo was Mike Macy. Won the day money. I never remember, it was 9.6 and won at Pecos and won the day money. And so I mean, and we went, I don't know, we went to there, and we've done really good that week. I went to 2 or 3 rodeos, Belton and Rock Springs back then was going on. And shoot, I won, I think we probably won 7,500, 8,000 that week. And back then 20,000 made the finals. And I was like, man, these guys go all year and they don't win but 20,000. And I'd won 7,500 in the first week, and I was like, I was in for a rude awakening when it all after it come a lot harder than that after the first week or two, but it was all good. I mean, but then I actually roped with D Pickett the first time I made the NFR.
What year was that? Was that 1990?
1990. roped with D. I never will forget. We was at Caldwell, and his son got in the car, and he said, he introduced me to him. Says, "Yep, this Rich. We're test driving a new healer." And so with Cody, his son, he was played in the NFL, and I'm a good quarterback, and it's kind of different when you start getting around guys like that. You see how they practice, how
Yeah.
their work ethics.
That's the
are.
one thing I heard about D. Pickett was he was extraordinarily disciplined and a very hard work ethic.
Oh yeah, yeah. He would. I never will forget when I made we right before the NFR. We was at Caldwell practicing, and his son Cody, good football player. They would he would we'd wait till he come home from the work school, and then he would go and he'd turn the steer out. Back was long for buttons and things like that. He'd turn the steer out. He'd run down, take the rope off, and then he'd come back and they'd throw passes on the back and forth all the way. If we run 25 steers, rope. That's what they did. So it was
Because D was a heck of a football player. If I
Uh-huh.
remembered right, I thought he chose
Football.
rodeo over football and had a chance to go on, and because they played good college ball, if I remembered right.
I think you're right. Yeah.
And so he was a stud athlete as
Right.
well. And yeah, I remember those days.
Yeah.
There was a dare if you could work the chute, close it, and then haul butt, get the
Yeah.
rope on, open up the strip and shoot,
Yeah.
and then run back, get the steer loaded before the team would come back.
Yep.
There used to be a
So-
competition back in the day before
Yeah.
the clickers.
Oh yeah. Nowadays, like if it was the clickers, it's like, man, this clicker's not working.
How are we going to practice?
How are we going to practice today? They don't really realize. So, yeah.
So yeah, D. So you got a good start then, getting in with D, learning the discipline of it, learning how to work at it, and then your first NFR in 1990. That would have been in Vegas.
Mm-hmm.
So talk a little bit about starting now to get through and punch through your ticket now of learning how to rodeo, learn how to make the NFR.
Mm-hmm.
And in 1990, that was also, I guess, still 15 team ropers. It wasn't heading and heeling quite yet.
Right.
Is that correct?
Correct. There was.
So you end up making it
Mhm.
and then roping with D. What was that first NFR like?
You talk about nervous. Like I was just extremely nervous. But it's one of those deals that the crazy thing is, after about the third or fourth round, I had a chance to win the world championship first year I went, and I didn't rope very good after that. I guess I got nervous, just didn't rope that good, and it just didn't work out. So, but I think that helped me. That when it started getting in there for the years that we did win, because you had to build, you learn figure out how to lose where you can win, I guess.
Yeah, there's a certain amount of immunity that you kind of have to get to where uncomfortable enough to where you learn how to deal with it.
Right.
And nerves in there, especially when you're talking about sitting in that moat, not moving, you're not warmed up,
Right.
and then be able to get in there and perform. And then you look up and it's a bigger crowd than you've seen all year long, also in a different arena than
Right.
anyone's roped in all year long as well. So there's a lot of new things when you talk about going to Vegas that a guy has to learn how to overcome.
Well, that and people don't really realize. I mean, after you was a little kid watching NFR on TV, and you're 5, 6, 7 years old, and that's all you want to do, and you're 22 or 3, and finally make the finals, is like, man, is like it's such a it was, I don't know how you say it. It's just it was such a it was fun, but finally accomplishing your goal to make it, and then realizing that, I mean, that'll make you more nervous than anything right there.
Well, I still remember to this day walking behind that curtain, walking inside the box, and then you look up and the pyro smoke still over the top of the arena, and the top row you can barely see them because of the pyro, and it looks like a dream.
Right.
And I remember the round number 1 going in there and looking at all that, and then I still got a rope.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Kind of got caught being
Yeah.
a fan.
Oh yeah.
And then I was like, I got a job to do.
Right. So but I think the crazy thing is, I think the day money paid $6,800 back then. I really think that's what they paid.
Because that was before equal money, I believe, in the team roping.
Oh yeah, about 2 or 3 years,
Mm-hmm.
and then they went on there a couple years, and that's when they changed and got the equal money and for the barrel racers and the team ropers.
We'll talk about from 1990, some of your partners that you had before 97, where you and Speed started roping, but talk a little bit about that 7 years from 90 till 97, the guys you roped with, horses you had, what you started learning how to start overcoming and evolving before those world titles showed up.
Well, I roped with Jay Ellerman in my second year. Really, those are today still my good friends. And I lived in Colorado with them. We roped, went to a lot of the amateur rodeos, a lot of ropings. Back then, Colorado was huge in the summertime. You could go rope all you wanted to. And so we did that, and we did some schools. And then we, I forget, oh, then what, I think a year or so later, I'd actually cut my thumb off. Well, actually, where all this started is I'd lived with T Woman for 5 years, and and
So you was living down there in
I
Lano,
was
roping
living
with
down there
T a bunch.
roping with T, and it was one of those deals I got to practice with him a lot. But I mean, when we'd go to the ropings and go to some amateur rodeo stuff like that. But back then, he was the man, and it was like I didn't, you know, just probably didn't rope good enough to rope with him. And then later on, I got to roping good and made the NFR and got some confidence and got some better horses. And he asked me to rope, and then we talked about it and we did it like around Colorado Springs. He said, and like you said, it was only one world championship, but if I won 3,500, whatever he could take me to NFR. So he tells me, says, all we need to win 12, 15,000, we'll go home, and I'll take you, So we won that in 10 days, 2 weeks, and I got it done, and we won Dodge City and placed at Colorado Springs, and it started working out really good. But we'd already roped a lot of steers
Yep.
together before we ever roped at the pro rodeos.
When you were talking about when you first started making it and started getting better horses, what was the horses that you had, and what did you start noticing? What what characteristics were you looking for? What was it that the horses, when you were upgrading in horses,
Mm-hmm.
how was that evolving? Because that's one thing you were really known for, was the amount of good heel horses you had under you. So what was those things you were looking for as your horse herd was starting to evolve?
Well, as to me, is like they, my whole career, whether it's at the NFR or the BFI, I had to be trying to be 4 or 3, 4 or 10. I thought about riding Morris down the arena. Popeye Boltonhouse told me, he goes, well, your only weakness is you get lazy riding down the arena. So um, my main deal is I needed horses that could run, that would overcome that for me.
Hmm.
If I had to kick, I didn't rope on them real good, so I had to have fast horses. And uh, I had a horse called Stewie I bought from Kevin Stewart, and he was a little sorrel horse. He was good, but he got I rode him at 2 or 3 NFRs, and then he started getting tired and playing out. So then that's when I'd leased Roni from Dave Key, and
Well, Black Gold was in there somewhere,
yeah,
if I remembered right, too.
yeah, I'd bought that's actually the first horse I had when I roped with T.
Hmm.
And I never will forget. I give 7,500 for him, and some friends of mine helped me buy him, and I paid him back in 10 days. But and 7,500 was
That was a
quite a
pretty
bit of
good
money.
chunk of change
That was
back then.
quite a bit of money back then. So then we got Stewie, and then then they kind of started getting tired, and then we got Roni.
Roni.
But I knew what he was because I'd leased him from Dave Key for the U.S. finals. And then Stewie I was in Phoenix. I never will forget it. Yeah, I was in Phoenix, and he just wasn't working good, just kind of getting old. And I knew I had to get another horse, and I knew what Roni was. So I called David on the phone, and
Because this is one a lot of people don't understand. David healed back
healed
in the
up.
day, and
He
healed good
healed real good.
before he
And
headed.
but he had also, but about right in that time, he was working in the oil field too, so he wasn't just using him a whole lot. So
What was it about Roni when you rode him that stuck out to you?
he was a heel horse. He was strong. He was all there. I mean, he he would buck. I mean, he was, like if I'd saddle him, put him on the walker. There's a lot of times I'd throw him in the trailer, and if I was going to the rodeo that night, if it was anywhere close, he was saddled when I left home. I mean, he was just a lot of horse, and just he just got better and better. I mean, the more when I got speed and was riding him, and I think I cracked him out first year with T at the NFR.
Thought I
And
seen you with T.
I rode him with T's the first time I really rode him out there, and I could realize how fast he could get down the arena, and then it just helped. I mean, he was so fast and strong, and he finished good. I mean, you could heal one and help your header.
Yeah. Because you were also going through that time where you started seeing things in rodeo evolve. You started seeing from 15 team ropers to where they started taking 15 headers and 15 healers.
Right.
You started seeing equal money start showing up at the NFR. Talk a little bit about where things started evolving. First off, when did they finally update 15 headers and 15 healers? And then when was it then they got equal money? You remember?
I don't remember what years it was, but I mean, like you say, they messed around there and they got finally. I just remember we had a meeting at every year. They have a meeting right during the NFR, and that's actually the one time you have a little say. And we was in that meeting, and they're like, and it is kind of one of them deals that they drew a line in the sand and says we're not going to really compete, and on Friday if we don't get equal money. And
because it was equal money for team ropers and the barrel racers, if I remember
yes,
right.
for both of us. And so it was, and there was some people, 3/4 of the everybody was for it because everybody needed the same amount of money, but there was some of the other people really wasn't for it. So, but it all worked out. I mean, it's like I remember Matt Tyler was one of the guys that kind of led this deal. And
if I remember right, it was Matt Tyler and Charmaine.
Right,
James.
Sure could be.
If I remembered right.
Yeah, and they got got the equal money, and I don't know if it counted that year for I mean, but it counted in your checkbook when you got home from the NFR.
Yeah.
This episode is brought to you by Ambrook. Running a ranch today means managing far more than cows. You're balancing multiple enterprises, family partners, land bases, leases, inventory, equipment, and markets that move fast. But if your books and inventories live in the checkbook, spreadsheets, or buried inside QuickBooks, you're always reacting instead of steering the business. Ambrook gives ranchers real managerial insight, not just bookkeeping. See profitability by enterprise or location. Know whether hay is paying for itself, whether stockers outperform cow-calf this year, or whether that rented pasture is worth keeping. Your balance sheet updates automatically, and with ag-specific inventory management, you always know exactly what feed, inputs, and livestock you have on hand and what they're costing you. Tag receipts from the feed store, reconcile from the tractor, and eliminate year-end scramble. Ranchers save up to 90% of bookkeeping time and finally get numbers they can trust for family meetings, lenders, and major expansion decisions. Ambrook is built for ranching complexity, not generic small business accounting. Try it free for a month at ambrook.com/Crawford. That's AMBROOK.com/Crawford.
Hi, I'm Trevor Brazil.
My name's Corey Kuntz.
Hi, I'm Gino Nogueira.
I'm Luke Brown.
Hi, I'm Tyler Wade.
I'm Caleb Driggers. Miles Baker. Wesley Thorpe. Paul Eves. Patrick Smith. We ask so much out of our horses that recovery is crucial, and that's why I use Equinety.
I've been doing this a long time. What I have in common with these ropers is we all trust Equinety.
I feed Equinety because I want to give my horses any edge.
My horse.
My horse.
My horse.
My horse.
All my horses have the Equinety edge.
Hey, Team Ropers, just a quick note. My 2026 clinic schedule is available now at charlycrawford.training. You can find all up-and-coming dates and locations listed under the Clinics tab. If you'd like more information or want to apply to host, the host form is available on the website under the Clinics tab as well. Again, that's charlycrawford.training for the full clinic schedule and hosting information. For any questions, email me at charlycrawfordtraining@gmail.com.
Because that's when you started seeing the steam of team roping really start taking off, because there was starting to be some money in there.
Yes.
Other rodeos were following suit, because we're seeing the same thing in the breakaway right now as it's evolving, having to punch through them the same things you guys had to work through back then in the mid 90s, to where all of a sudden now there's 2 world champions, a header and a healer, and then now there's equal money to where Now the rigs started kind of expanding. You started seeing where more guys were making more money. The horses were starting to become worth more. And then also too was sponsors started becoming something to where you guys could have.
Right.
Because before that, nothing on your shirt. You weren't even allowed to have anything on your shirt.
Right.
So then it started. You were kind of right there when you started winning. A lot of things were evolving in rodeo and team roping.
Yeah. I remember my first couple NFRs. I had real nice sweaters.
I remember that.
Yeah, Jackie, she would his wife. She'd help me, and so no, we didn't have sponsors. We had sweaters.
Yeah.
So
because it wasn't like you had Under Armour back then too. And it was cold outside too. Because I remember, and that was a big deal. And then also T with his chaps.
Yeah.
It was another good way to stay warm when he would have the chinks on there at the rodeo. But yeah, that was. I remember we all did that when we would go roping. All of us would have the sweatshirts on because we'd watch it from the NFR. That was the only rodeo really you could watch throughout the year. Most of the time was the NFR.
Oh yeah.
That was a trend.
That was the trend back in the day. Yeah. Oh,
but when you guys started getting sponsors, that's when I started seeing where a lot of you guys started learning how to tend to the business of that. Because before, like T said, everyone talks about roping for a living. T was like, we roped for a living.
Right.
In the 80s, we bought our own ropes, we bought our own feed, we bought our own fuel, paid our own fees. And if you didn't win, no fuel got put in the fuel tank, no fees got paid. So if you didn't win, you didn't keep going.
You're exactly right. And I really, I just remember, when you're roping for a living, I mean, it's just like you say, that's what it is. I mean, you're either all in or you're all out, and it was just one of those deals you had to, you got to figure out how to win. I mean, and if you figure out how to win, you was in good shape. But if you didn't, and there'd been a lot of times that I remember when I was just getting started, I went to roping in Waco, and is on a New Year's open. They used to have a bigger open on the New Year's, and I went down there and I lost all my money and couldn't make my truck payment, and it's just after a little bit of that, you kind of figure out, hey, I might need to catch that last one, or figure out or get home and work at it more, do something. There's something you got to do.
Well, there was such an art, it felt like back then, because I remembered roping with a lot of those guys. And if you placed in the first round and missed your second one, your ass was getting chewed. You don't drop the ball on that one. When you've got that first one down, you don't drop the ball. When you make the short round and you're in the first 5 calls, you don't break out. You don't miss.
Right.
And if you've got a chance to win it, you hold that lead. But if you can go rope a steer and just go knock him down and win second or third, that was also a strategy too, because that kept you going. Well, there was so much back then that like guys roped smarter, because if they didn't, you didn't put no fuel in the fuel tank.
You're exactly right. I mean, there was a complete different mentality about roping back then.
You roped
you roped it. But it's like you say, you had to be all right. You didn't take the shots they take nowadays. It's not saying, I know these guys still rope for a living and they do a really good job at it. But what I've seen over the way everything's changed is how much, my mom and dad helped me tremendous. But now, and is what they could. But on the other hand, nowadays you see, people showing up with $60,000 heel horses, $200,000 rigs. That wasn't there. I mean, I know, and I've seen it, with people that's I don't know, I'd say it. They've been helped so much they don't know how to win. I guess that, but because it's but when you grow up and having to win,
there's a certain hunger that creates,
right? And it's you gotta stay on top of it.
Yeah,
and you got to do what you got to do to get better to stay on top of it.
It's one thing I always remember T talking about, and when I got to work for Tyler, and so I got to live in Llano for a long time, and Eye of the Tiger was something big that they would constantly talking about, was having that drive, having that hunger to where you're always trying to get better, whether it was horses, whether it was with your run or whatever. You're staying hungry, because if you didn't, like you say, you didn't eat.
Or the next guy behind you, they're out there doing it, so if you, and that's the one thing with me that I've seen, and I've maintained it pretty good over the years, is, trying to change with times. You know, the ropes are better, the horses are better, everything's better nowadays. But I've had to change. You know, I remember, you know, I started roping with Dave Key one summer, and we was going to try to make the finals, and everything I did, I could rope all week home, not hardly not miss. And it seemed like when I started actually going rodeoing again with him, that man, I wrote, I, I mean, I'd something would go wrong. I'd miss, rope a leg, just draw bad, something. And so just we went and entered everything, amateur rodeos, ever a pro rodeo there was, and we got in the middle. And I got back in the game, fighting shape in the game, and we left and we made the finals in about by Ellensburg, so but it there for a while when I didn't, and that's one thing I see, you know now Stephenville is like Atlanta we used to be. Everybody here, I mean, they say Luke Brown will get up in the morning, practice, go to a jackpot, and come home and practice. I mean, they're all his work ethic is so good, and they're right here by it, and it's just and I come up here and rope with Kobe Payne or try to come, I'm down there by myself in Lano, and and it's like I get to doing things, and they say iron sharpens iron. I mean, and so I every now and again I got to get out of there and go rope with somebody different myself to or I go to Speeds. I mean, Speed, he knows the ins and outs of my game as much as anybody, and I've been roping with Gabriel some this winter, and it's been good for me to go over there and rope and actually, you know, work at my roping.
Yeah.
And
I think there's so much too also where, it's also biblical where it talks about certain things of where, there's so much knowledge and experience, but then there's also so much energy and youth.
mm-hmm.
When you're talking about going roping with Kobe Payne and,
Right.
Where he's seeking your knowledge, but then you being around those young guys just going at it where there's such a good balance where it evens out, where
Mm-hmm.
it helps the guy's season kind of get that fire back and a little bit of that energy back. But then for him also learning those reads that you've seen millions of times where it's such a good exchange.
Right. Like we have a really good relationship, works good for both of us. And like I say, with Speed going over and roping with him, it helps me a lot because, it don't matter. I mean, well, I've run thousands of steers with him, but you don't want to, I don't want to go over there and rope bad. So, it just a little extra drive. When I'm at home, I get to going through the motions.
Yeah. Yeah. Also, too, I thought it was interesting when you're talking about your heel horses as you were starting to evolve before you started roping with Speed was, I think there's kind of a horse rider chart in a way where if you ride really relaxed, it's good to have a horse under you that has a lot of energy.
Mm-hmm.
For one, that almost calms that horse down
Mm-hmm.
because you're not overriding him.
Right.
And he's already got the energy. But then you talk about guys that ride really hard and really aggressive,
Mm-hmm.
where that guy might be able to ride a horse that doesn't have as much to where his energy is creating more in that horse,
Mm-hmm.
where what you're finding is that horse that's going to be able to do it for you to where you can
Right.
do your job. Because they're so important, I think, when guys are starting to find that what makes them win is they got to find a horse too that fits them.
Yeah,
and there's a
that's
big part of that.
Fit your style. And I didn't really realize a lot of this stuff until I started doing clinics, and everybody's built different. One size don't fit all. Your arm,
Yeah, your style and Alan Bach is going to be different.
It's going to be different. He's got more range and longer. His body's he's a lot taller. So I had to get by with riding my horse better but he had more range because he, so, but going back some of the horsemanship part of it is, um, that is what I was lacking. And I was at I remember this, I was at the George Strait roping when it was in San Antonio. I had three of the best partners ever. I was roping with Speed, T Woman, and Jake Barnes. Back then it was just, you couldn't get him better. And so we're roping, and I'm good on all three steers first round. And I miss all three steers the next round and had good chances. And I got to know, but I could tell my roping was falling off. Had no idea why, but it was falling off. And so we got home on Monday morning, and Speed come over, and I had a boy there at work for me, and he went and Speed gets on, puts his hand on the saddle horn, gets in the box, Don't take a rope. And we got just average good muley. This boy goes, turns him. Speed just goes down there, and I'd have give him to you if I known. The steer turned, Rony went straight to the back end, and Speed didn't say a whole lot. He just comes back and he goes, "There's your problem." And I had to start working on my horsemanship that day.
Because you were having to micromanage him.
I was doing everything, and I was my riding, and he was strong, and I had to go back and figure out it's in increments. I had to get him, if he scored good, he was good in the field. So I had to go back, really get him scoring better. Then I had to get him down the arena, and then I forgot where I was stopping him, backing him up, getting him back to reading the steer.
Collected and controlled.
Controlled. Right, and then I had to do it on the inside, get back to where I could see the feet. The reason that I knew all this was going wrong is right in the middle of all this, you mentioned Black Gold. All right, he's out in the pasture. So I had a boy that worked for me, and Speed says, get Black Gold in here. So we go in and get Black Gold, and he didn't score the day I bought him, didn't score the day he died, but he was outstanding in the field. And so Speed, I get on him. Speed turns me about 5 or 6 steers right in front of the chute. I just heel him. He goes, "There's nothing wrong with your roping. It's your horsemanship." I mean, and I started figuring out when I was pulling, I couldn't deliver, and I had to go back and put the cow back in him, get him reading the steers, getting back to the inside. Because what people don't realize, your horse position creates your body position. I'd get behind them, then I'd get to leaning, and just everything would just go bad. It was just a snowball effect. Yeah. And so then, luckily, I it's kind of like my roping was at one time. I just knew about enough of it to be dangerous, but Speed was really good at that. He helped me a lot with that. And then the other deal, then a couple years later, I met Chris Cox right after all this, and then he got to trying to show me and help me with my horsemanship. So I've been pretty fortunate about, getting help with my horsemanship.
Well, talk a little bit about when you started roping with T. I think it was around 96, 97, if I remembered right. And then you tell the story, because I'm guessing, I thought maybe Speedy was roping with Clay Cooper, I think in 97, and you were roping with T. Woolman.
Right.
And then for whatever reason, you and Speedy got thrown together.
Well, it was one of those deals, and the way I remember it is T and Clay, they'd both won world championships. Speed and I hadn't, and we was wanting to, win a championship. So we actually went to, we talked about it over there at Spanish Fort, and says, "You want to go up to the Northwest?" Because they had, Clay and T had kids, and about time school was going to start. So they come home, and we went up there. And we actually won Pendleton, and we got along really good. And we didn't.
Because that's what I remembered. T and Clay wanted to go home and not go to the Northwest.
Right.
Be with family. You and Speed were single, or not have kids, but wanted to still get going. So you guys partnered up.
Right.
And headed to the Northwest.
Right. And then we got up there and actually had some pretty good success. And we kind of got home, and we didn't know how it was all going to go when we got home. If we was switching back or how it went down and everything. But come to find out, T and Clay had entered the U.S. finals. That's back in the fall.
Mail in your entries.
Yeah.
Back
so
then.
they did that. So Speed and I, we just started about right then.
Yeah, because I remember, I think you guys were buddied with, I think, Jason Stewart and Buck Campbell, if I remembered right. And you guys showed up to an amateur rodeo, because I was this amateur rodeo then in 97, and you guys showed up at Monroe, Washington.
Right.
And I'd never seen anyone start their swing right after they nodded and threw when the line was out there, and you heeled one, and we all looked at each other, and it was like nothing we had ever seen before. And then we weren't the only ones, because then once that started, it was like nothing no one else had seen before either. Right. There was some instant chemistry, because I remember you guys were going to some of the amateur rodeos, just getting in runs, trying to get some reps in and get familiar with each other. It felt like,
you can rope all you want at home. I mean, it's great, but you got to do it under competition. And to me, that if I had to say one thing about my roping today, that would be my weakness. I'm either at a school or doing something with one of my sponsors, or doing something. other than going to the amateur rodeo or going to the jackpot and staying in
Staying sharp.
competition, staying
Yeah.
sharp.
So when you guys started, 97, go to the Northwest, went good there, realized your other partners are going to probably rope together, you and Speed are matched up, and then you guys go to the NFR. Talk a little bit about the practice sessions you had before that first 97 NFR going into Vegas.
That was the year that we made the snow fence, and that's about the time we started trying to, Speed was trying to help me get my
Because Speed was from Florida.
Uh-huh.
You lived in Llano, correct? And so he just came out there and stayed with you because that was before he lived in Llano, correct?
Right. Oh yes, he moved in with me, and actually I had an apartment in the barn. And he stayed in it, and we just, and he taught me a lot about I had horses down there, like some head horses. He said I need to practice horses. All right, so I had some horses down there, but he's like, well, they're no good. I thought, why ain't it no good? You can turn all the steers you want on him. Well, he don't score. He was, I started figuring out they had to score, they had to do everything right. I mean, you had to have a pretty top-notch practice horse.
Yeah, because he had to make it real for you and also had to get the feel for him.
Correct. And so he, that's where I think the horsemanship started. I tell this story all the time. And when I roped with T, I would keep the steers straighter, move them to the left. And Speedy hated the steers. He don't want them. He said, if they leave the chute, whichever way they leave them alone. Because if I hazed them about the time he was throwing, steered move, and his rope would go off to the right. So we're roping one day at the house, and he goes, and I'd leave there, get up there, and yell at the steers and get them to move over. So he tells me, he goes, here, run a couple on Viper. So I was like, all right. And I was still pretty young and pretty athletic back then. And I probably athletic as I ever was at that time. So I get on there and I remember, I'm like as yesterday, I'm going to the steer and Speedy gets up there and hollers at the steer, and Viper had so much cow. Steer went left, Viper went left. My feet went over behind me, and I read the breast collar. He goes, "That's why I don't like them hazed." And I was like, I never hazed anymore. Never hazed one after that since then.
Because there is certain chemistry to where when you guys are going, because back in the day, if a horse broke wide and the heeler stepped the steer to him,
made a
you
good
could make
run.
them runs all day long in the middle of the arena. What Speedy was doing was hitting that start and throwing a little bit sooner.
Way sooner.
And then all of a sudden where you're in that pattern of stepping them about the time he's throwing, and then everything's off kilter.
Everything.
Because I remember that when all of a sudden now steers were staying to the right or steers were staying straight was one of the few times I'd seen that where he was also getting closer to the pin as he was breaking towards the steer, especially when you talk about the NFR, where then he had so much more room.
Right.
On that left wall.
Like his horse, like the NFR Viper was so good. And, like he could take off and he could pull and then he'd go to the inside and he'd just, now I don't know, you know more about this. I don't think that has the score changed at the NFR? It's the same. It's okay. And like to me, I see guys nowadays, they maybe they're throwing from the further back in the box, whatever, but it's almost like everybody reaches. You watch when Viper was hitting on all cylinders in the first 2-3 years, it was like chip shots. He didn't have to reach. Yep. Maybe a coil away, never now and again they wouldn't get away from him, but he scored so good. Viper was so good, break the inside, and and then he could just handle the steers. And that Viper was so he was so short strided, and plus Speedy was good at it. He would give me 3 chances. I could heal them when they turned. I could heal them here, there, or out there. So, and I had 3 chances versus 1. And that's the biggest thing I see nowadays. I see them guys today, they reach, they turn them, and their stride's long, and it's fast if you catch them, but if you don't catch them, you only have 1 chance.
Well, so when you guys were practicing before that 97 NFR, talk a little bit about Viper, because that was just such a historical horse. We talked about we just talk about Scooter. You talk about Butterbean. You talk about some of the horses in that era. Viper, when you think about Viper, you think about the NFR. You think about them short setups. He was flat, short strided, but he still had speed.
Right.
And his ability to stay up in that corner and handle steers consistently was when we started seeing something that was never done before.
Right. And I mean, but that horse was so athletic. And Speed does, like I say, he does such a good job, like using his hands, using his feet, keeping them picked up, keeping their shoulders picked up. And what a lot of people don't understand is whatever that head horse's stride is, what that steer stride is going to be. And, so it's like I say, he would give me 3 chances and versus just like one Hail Mary shot.
So when you guys were practicing Viper, he just kind of stayed working.
Yeah, he didn't.
He had practice horses to give you the reps to where this is kind of the vicinity of where the play is going to be when we get to the Thompson Mac.
Right. And yeah, he didn't hardly rope no steers. Maybe, like I said before, maybe 1, 2, 3 at the most over the week, or times of practicing. He would say this is full contact. And so, but he would leave there hanging on a lot of them fast and then just make him go back to the steer. And so when we'd go to Vegas, if they went straight or right, Viper was going to get them.
Yeah, because then when you talk about 97, talk a little bit about that first year compared to some of the other years, and then talk about how it all ended up when the round 10 was over with.
It was cool. I mean, we got out there and we got going, and I can't remember. We placed, I don't know, we won. I wish it'd be nowadays. We'd had a lot of money because we were placing like 7 out of the 10 rounds, and then we did that. But I never will forget that year. That was a night. It was like the 8th round, maybe, or the 9th round. Went there with Codiole and all them guys. Jeff Chapman broke the record 3 times in the calf roping. And I remember I was sitting up there in the stands watching that, and I was sitting up there with my wife, Rhonda, and having a beer because we had won the championship. Mathematically, there was no way they could beat us, and we was up there, and I was happy about that. And then that happened, and watched the calf rope and all. I remember that night. It was kind of crazy.
Yeah, because you guys had such a good run there. And then what was that first world title like? Because there's something too when a guy's paying his dues, all the blood, all the sweat, all the miles, all the tears, and then to be able to finally look up and look at that gold buckle for the first time.
It's just you can't hardly describe it. It's just a dream come true. I mean, after, one, I'd gotten really close several times, and then actually finally winning it. And it was just it's like a load off your shoulder, after, a few days. I mean, you don't really realize it till later on. I mean, but it was just like, man, that was cool. Because then, I mean, it's I would say, like I lived with T-Woman, and you're around world champions and around that, and it's almost like it's like, man, I now I actually belong here. It's like you're.
Your belief system changes.
Yeah. So it's but it's pretty cool.
So from now on, you and Speed, I mean, now we talk about from 1997 all the way to 2004. I mean, slogans, T-shirts made. If you're going to get rich, you got to have Speed. I mean, just all the stuff that goes along to where you only need one name to know who Speed and Rich were. Like you guys now are household names, and just the legacy, the domination. I mean, it was phenomenal. It's iconic. But you talk about Viper, you talk about Roni, Roni being a 4-time heel horse of the year as well. But talk about how good those two matched up, because there is a lot of chemistry also between horses, along with the ability of each other, how they rope.
Also too is I had Chili Dog too, about that time. So I had Roni, Chili Dog, Gambler, and we had great horses. And like the cool thing is like Roni was good. I remember I rode him at the NFR, and I won Salinas on him. So you get a horse that can do both like that. It's very cool.
That's a freak.
And like Roni and Chili Dog was 2 different styles of horses. Chili Dog been ranched on, bought him from Andy Paul Jones, been ranched on, been done everything. And then Ronnie, he was just never been out, hardly been outside of the arena and things like that. So, but Chili Dog was a lot easier. I mean, you just throw a saddle on him, lope down there, and he'll one and go rope. But Ronnie had such a motor, I had to maintain him. So,
and then you guys, we talked about the NFR, and you talked about where Viper was just deadly. And then, and I don't know when did Speedy get Bob? Because that's when you started seeing where you guys were dominating everything, from the BFI to Salinas to Cheyenne to everything. Like, you guys had the horses now where it didn't make a crap where you guys were. You dominated everywhere.
Well, it's just I never will forget this. I think he was roping with Clay or so, and I think he had gotten Bob about the time me and him started, that summer before. And because I know it is, because he rode him at Pendleton when we won Pendleton.
Because he came from Bob McClellan, if I remember
Bob
right.
McClellan. And we was at a roping, I think it's a Mike Booth roping out at Ceres, California. And that horse was unreal. He speed rode him. He was trying him. His inner twice, speed rode him, and Bob McClellan rode him. And they rode him 4 times, and this was a difficult setup. Steers run, big arena, deep. And that horse just backed in there and just scored every time. And it was like very, very, it was like something you did. I mean, horse stayed hooked that good, that many runs, and just is unreal how good he was.
Yeah. That's when I seen, and I think the whole world seen, to where there's such an advantage to having horses matching a certain setup. To where you had Viper, then you had Bob, and that started changing a lot of guys' styles, I think, too, of what they were looking for and what time of year those horses were, because there's logistics and planning on where these horses are going.
Right, exactly. I mean, Bob was really good at Salinas, Cheyenne. I really, I think Viper got hurt or something, and he might have run 1 or 2 on him at the NFR.
Wasn't many.
Yeah. There wasn't many. But, I mean, that horse was, but we had, like I say, I had Gambler, Ronnie, Chili Dog. He had those 2, and then he had another fill-in or 2. And it was just one of those deals where we, all the horses matched up. We matched up. Like I say, we didn't have children at the time, and that's all we thought about was just, where we're going to go rope today, or how we're going to do it, or what do we need to do to accomplish the next goal.
When you guys started roping, because I thought that Speedy always had that short game and had that first, especially when you first seen him. But it looked like what he was starting to get figured out was when you guys roped was his long game, his BFIs, the longer starts, maybe not always going directly at the short round. Like, it looked like he was evolving to where at that point in time, what did you started noticing? Because, like, you talk about BFIs, the George Straits, I mean, the things that you guys won throughout the year. When you guys first started, what did you guys start feeling like? Because it's not like just when you won the World 97 that you guys just had it. There were steps to where you guys got to where you guys kept evolving from 97.
Right. But I think that has a lot to do with making runs in competition and knowing, well, this didn't work, so let's go home and we got to fix this. And whether it was with a horse, whether it's with me, whether it's speed, whatever we had to put the run together and keep it consistent. That's, but I really, actually one of the first guys, like when I talked about roping with D. Pickett, he was the first guy. I think it all comes down to scoring the headers. I mean, like he roped calves and he could score so good, and he would get it on them before everything got out of control, got to running. And I think that has so much to do with healing, is getting it on them. And that all, if you miss a barrier, then you run them down there. Stuff just gets out of it. But then Speed scored so good. You watch him at the BFI. I mean, I was sitting there watching the other day, on my phone, or the short round. Same thing with Driggers. Driggers is the same way. He can score so good. And he does everything good. But his scoring, them guys are like, you're at the BFI. Why not miss a barrier just a little bit after you're clean on all of them or something? But they don't. I mean, now, like I said, it's all changed.
I remember Speedy telling me one time too. I hooked it on one right there and one around, and I was like, man, there just felt like there was a spot where if I hit the start, I could get that steer before he get away. And Speedy looked at me and he goes, "There's always a spot where you can get him before you get away."
Exactly.
It was like I thought something was new.
Yeah.
He's like, "No, this has been around."
Yeah. Oh yeah.
That was one thing that I thought he found first on the
Well,
head side.
but people don't really realize how much money we won on fast steers.
Yeah.
I mean that yeah. I mean, like, there's a lot of times it didn't work out, but we won money on steers that because he could he could get them at before they got taken off.
Top speed.
Yes, and he didn't have to
I remember
ride
at
to them.
Walla Walla one year. There was one time you guys got the runner,
Right.
the hardest running steer in the herd. And I remember we all watched because there's just no way. And I think you guys had to. I think you might have been out on the first one, whatever. So you had to go at him.
Right.
Like there's just no way. And I remember Speed looked at you, and I think he said something about leaving straight or something. I forget what it was. And he hits the line, all three coils tight, and you guys were 4-9. And I think won the day money. And we were like, that guy walks on water.
Yeah.
Because all of us were thinking that team walks on water because there was chemistry. There was Speed had something to figure out that he was wanting to do on the head side, which you allowed him to do and was able to mold around what he had going on to where you knew what your job was. Because I forget how many years in a row, 2 feet for maybe 5, 6, 7 years at the NFR. I forget how long it was, but your streak where it was 2 feet was years.
Right.
It was phenomenal.
Yeah, Martin, I didn't know about it. Martin told me one time, I said, "Do you know you're up 60 of them in a row by 2 feet at the finals?" And I was like, "Not really, but yeah, that's a good plan." I'm glad
because
it
that's
out.
probably one of the most consistent healing stats I think anybody's ever had.
Well, it has to do with speed, and Viper getting on them and slowing them down and giving me all them chances.
But also I mean, there was chemistry,
Right?
Because even after you guys split, Speed ropes with Clay Cooper, you rope with a few other guys as well, Trevor and things like that. But it just wasn't the same as when you guys had. It's funny how I remember Bob Harris saying that there's certain chemistry because you seen when Jake and Clay split up, they tried to win it with other guys, but there was just something about with you and Speed that it just was like, well, I mean, it was in the slogan: if you're going to get rich, you got to have speed.
There you go. But like I say, it revolves. The bottom line is how much work ethic we did. We put the time and work into it, and then we had the horses and Speedy thinking outside of the box, and we put the puzzle together.
Talk a little bit about your guys' work ethic, because it was when I remember coming from the Northwest, stayed with you guys one winter. I was buddy with Stewie and Bucky, and so I got to come down my rookie year and hang with you guys. Speedy put me on a couple of his practice horses. It was the coolest thing from kid from Canby ever got to experience. And when I watched you guys practice, it was nothing I'd ever seen before. I'd never seen guys rope that many. I'd never seen practice horses. I'd never seen where you could rope during the day.
Right.
Because I grew up in blue collar, about like you, where everything was, when everyone got done working, then we roped.
Right.
You guys did it all day. It was one of the first times I'd ever seen where it was strategic and you guys were working on stuff. Talk a little about kind of some of your guys' practice sessions, and talk a little about some of the stuff that Speed would do that would obviously think outside the box too.
Right. Well, it's like when I never will forget, like we was at Speed would always make the last steer of the day the hardest steer to rope. Whether he ducked his head, the only thing that Speed would not rope was draggers. We never had draggers, which is rightly so on the head horses. So we never roped no draggers, but he would pick the one that run the fastest, run the slowest, ducked his head, something. And his big deal is we got to be 11, not 5. Got to be 11. Just don't go beat yourself. So and the reason I'm talking about this is it comes full true. We're at Salinas, we're high team back, and this steer is running fast, and he's ducking his head, and he's talking to me as we're going down the arena. He's ducking his head, he's running, and he goes and turns him, and we was 11 or 12 and won the rodeo. But I mean, he would do that at home, or set the practice up like the last year, the hardest one. All you gotta do is catch. You'd call it high teamer. So there's lots of times, people beats themselves when all they have to do is catch. and that's way that's how he practiced.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other deal is we he would work his horses like Viper going to left, all his horses. He would have a steer that goes left, makes you. He would set it, take the machine, back, move the machine, and then he would work his horses, and then I would do whatever I need to do at home or whatever. I trip steers in or whatever. I'd either practice tripping or something, and then he'd say, "Well, let's rope at 4 or 5 or whatever," and then I would show up, and he wouldn't like he'd already worked his horses, so then he would turn me steers. Then we worked on our roping, and I remember when he first year, I mean, we'd probably rope 80, 100 steers a day or more. I mean, we roped lots of steers. I had 5 or 6 heel horses, and not and I had the thing about it is I didn't have practice horses. I had good ones. I mean, I could rope 10 on one and 10 on another one, then come back and we'd let them blow, and you could rope another 8 or 10 on them, and got good quality practice. We had good steers. I remember I used to get steers from Dan Fisher back in the day, and we'd rope them, and just we kept real good steers, and then we roped, had lots of muleys too. I mean, that's the one thing that I really think that headers that I see overlook. Back in the day, they always thought, you know what, you got to change your angles. You're going to this or that. I can't rope the horns. That's crazy. Anybody that T, Speed, any of them guys that can head, you can rope them around the neck. You can rope them whatever you need to. If you can't change your angles, and how are you going to get better? And then for the head horses, they're light, they're so easy, and heeling from they're fast footed. It keeps my speed on my rope. You can heel them, you can dally, and they don't really put a lot of load on your horses.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
and then financially too, you also didn't
exactly.
You didn't lose as much.
You didn't lose. You made money on them.
Yeah,
and they're to me that is one of the biggest things is why people don't rope more muleys. And the first person I seen, we seen Jake and Clay do it a long time ago when they lived in Arizona. But the muleys is huge. I mean, it helps me keep the speed on my rope. Like I said, that's been my downfall my whole career is riding horse down the arena, keeping speed on my rope.
That's one thing I seen where you guys in the practice pen did so much to where you were practicing for anything that could happen.
Mm-hmm.
Not only were you guys making runs together, but then it's not always going to be that steer running that straight pattern with his head up.
Right.
There's going to be that steer that steps to you. There's going to be that steer that steps away from you. All those different scenarios with the head duck or the steer hitting a certain spot and being able to overcome that when the pressure's on. There's so much of that can be desensitized, in my opinion, in the practice pen.
Mm-hmm.
Where I've seen so many guys, where you were doing the same thing with as many clinics as you're doing now, is the same thing. What I see is guys just rope.
Right.
They go to the practice pen, they just rope.
Yes.
Well, are we practicing?
We're just roping.
Let's practice. Let's practice like you're going to go to a roping.
Right.
Let's work on, is your box the same as where you're going, or is you have a 14-foot box at home and a 22-foot box when you go to the jackpot?
Exactly.
Well, there's timing to that. What's your steers like? Are they just loping? Are they running a little bit more at the ropings you're going to?
Mm-hmm.
You guys matched what was going on at home, and then when you got to the rodeo, it looked like the only thing that changed was the environment. Well, all the work was done before you got there.
That's the great. That's where part of what Speed was good at is he set everything up just like where we was going to go, and we worked at it. Whatever we had to do, whether we was going to BFI, we let them out, went and made runs. We was going to the NFR or turf nally, we practiced for that situation. Where we was going next.
Talk a little bit about the first round that you guys would have at the NFR. That one was wild. The amount of struggles you guys had in the first round was almost like Bob Tallman, even after a while, started announcing. He's like, don't worry, folks. We do this every year.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And I mean, it was just had little struggles but I think the first year we won the first round. Yeah. So I mean, it's like, but then we kind of got into a funk there and had a little trouble. But we had run enough steers, kind of worked our way through it.
Worked your way out of it.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Talk a little about some of the guys that you battled in those 8 years? Because some of them you ran off with it. Some of them it came down to the end, and there were some clutch moments. Talk about some of the guys you battled, some of the situations in those 8 years to be able to win that many consecutive world titles.
Right. You know, and that's what a lot of people don't realize. There was a couple of times there we could have got beat very easy, and the ball bounced our way. You know, but I think one year Pook and BJ they won a bunch. And they had a really
I
good
remember in
chance.
2001, Pook and BJ had, I think, about a $40,000 lead, if I remembered right. You were there, but I was just a fan at the time. And then I think you guys show up at Dallas and cut that lead down to 10,000 before the NFR, and you're like, man, these guys know how to game.
Yeah.
Gosh, dang it! It was just like whatever situation you needed to do to get it done, you got it done.
You know, that's when they had that Texas Stampede, and you know, and that's kind of the first one of the bigger. That's a great rodeo. I mean, that rodeo was always. I won 28,000 there that year, you know, and that was just a weekly not a weekly rodeo, but I mean it was just a middle of the year, so you know, or the end of the year rodeo. It wasn't NFR, but I remember the first time I made the NFR, I come home with 22,000. I won 28,000 at one rodeo, you know, and it wasn't NFR.
Yeah. That's when you started seeing big rodeo shows.
Yeah, that's about time. Then they started having, then we started having the turf finales and pace and all that kind of stuff. And then everything started involving, you know, getting more money and I think, like you said earlier, when he started getting a world champion header, world champion heater, give everything more credibility too.
Yeah, then you started seeing sponsors and logos on the shirt. You started seeing the Western industry starting being able to support the athletes to get more advertising, and you started seeing where guys were starting to make a better living with the rope in their hand.
Right. You know, and the one thing and that I think with the sponsors, like we're talking about sponsors, you know, anybody, when I do clinics and or I go talk to kids or do something, you know, I have a lot of kids that come over and rope with me at home, and I tell them, I said, most people when they go to talk to a sponsor, they want to know, what can you do for me? It's not about what they can do for you. It's what you can do for them. And you know, that's what I tell them. You got to, you know, you got to do your part. Well, I know a lot of, you know, I've seen a lot of kids over the years that get sponsors and they don't do nothing for them and this and that.
Talk a little bit about that responsibility, because we had Corbin and Cooper on the podcast last week. You know, they just won Houston.
Right.
It's this experience that just showed up for them is life changing. They're going to be now in the realm of dealing with sponsors now, and how do you manage them? And so talk a little bit about how you manage your sponsorships along the way, because you guys were kind of at that era where that became part of business. You know, not only catching steers and winning world titles, but there was a business now too of being able to. There was money being made to where some guys actually made money rodeoing before they even entered.
Right. You know, and I never will forget. I think Wrangler was really the first sponsor I had where I actually got paid. I think I got paid $5,000, maybe, you know, something. And I was like, that's just like mailbox money, you know. I was like, so, but on the sponsor end of it, to me, and I see it, the Western industry is tapped out. I mean, you know, you got all kind of sponsors, but I mean, it's like, just say Resist All Hats. You know, they can only sponsor so many people and have so much money, you know, to allocate to it. So like me, I was fortunate enough. I started getting outside of the box. I got Fry Electronics, you know, some things like that they're out of the Western industry, where, you know. And one thing about like nowadays, I actually have more time to, if I have a sponsor, I can actually go help them. You know, because I can go, I have time to do it. When you're rodeoing, you don't have, there's one time a year at the NFR, maybe a tour finale, that you can actually go help the sponsors out, other than being on TV and seeing a logo. So I think you can, you know, and it's still, nowadays we have this social media, we have this, that, but it does not replace you going up and taking a classic rope and talking to a young man and saying, hey, this is, you know, I hear it all the time talking about like ropes and doing clinics, and I was like, all right, how if you're going to go to watch NFR, well, Jake Long kind of changed it last year, but up till last year, every got. I mean, there's 15 guys there. 11, 12 of them had a classic heel rope. Most of them have power line. I mean, them guys are not using that rope for an accident. I mean, they know that's the best rope that for them, to going. And when you got that many numbers, so it's like you kind of, you know, you know, help the situation out. You need to go talk to people. You can't replace somebody talking to them. I don't think. I mean, and I'm old school.
Well, personal relationships and the
Yes.
sponsorship side is key.
Yes.
And you're talking to of, so many kids walk up and said, "Hey, I need some ropes and rope sponsor,"
Right.
as opposed to, "Hey, look, this is where I'm at in the standings. This is the amount of people I have on my social media. This is, as it's updating now.
Right.
Back then it was, this is how many rodeos I'm going to. This is where I make the NFR every year. Well, now social media is a big part of how many followers do you have?
Exactly.
How much influence do you have?
Exactly.
Now that a guy's doing clinics, how many people are you in front of? So there's all these different things now of, hey, what do you have to offer that sponsor as well? It's a scratch your back and you're going to scratch each other's back. It's a partnership. It's not just a handout.
Exactly. I mean, you have to actually, and that's one thing I've felt like I've always tried to do. I remember when, I forget what year it was, I roped with Mark Simon at the NFR. I'd cut my thumb off. T and I was at Odessa, and I cut my thumb off, and I didn't get to rodeo much. And so, and I never was a great, never went to the world show a lot. But I went up there and I rode some horses, needing to make some money. So I went to the World Show and I was up there and we was killing time. Rhonda and I was walking through looking at the trailers, and Randy Bloomer was there. And we get talking to him, and I didn't know Randy Bloomer. And he started trying to sell me this, I think it's $38,000 trailer or something. And back then, and I was like, by the time we went through it a little bit, and I said, well, he was in Tomball at the time, didn't even have Bloomer trailers yet, and I said, what about I've got to go to the NFR. What about you just let me take one out there and would use it for advertisement? And he said, you know what, we'll do that. 10 days later, I had a trailer. I mean, it was very, and he come with it. I mean, he flew to Arizona. They brought he flew out there and they brought the trailer to me, and and we've been friends ever since.
There's one thing I think on the business side of it that you did really well was you networked. And that's the part of business in anything. You
Right.
got to be able to go up there and got to be able to talk with the sponsor, develop that relationships, have conversations. And so that's one thing I thought you did such a good job with was your networking abilities to be able to go there during Cowboy Christmas to your sponsors and, being able to talk throughout the year. I remember the amount of times you'd call me when I lived in Atlanta to be able to come turn steers, and you'd have a lot of your sponsor guys there just
Right.
coming roping and just using team roping as a way to network as well.
Right. And that's the key to me. That's the key to it, and I tell you another thing that's helped me is with the clinics and getting around Chris Cox, and you've been around him as much as, a lot of too. And you got to learn how to talk to people and present yourself. And, when I was young and didn't do a lot of clinics, wasn't in front of a lot of people, I was probably a little more shy and didn't do it as good. But it's when you're around it and you can start talking to people and then get confident about your teaching and things, then it all, people want to be around you and learn from you.
That's one thing I thought Chris Cox was phenomenal at. Like, I don't even know how he manages his time. He does such a good job with communicating with so many different people and all the clinics and being able to ride all the horses. He's done an amazing job with it. And I know the amount that I've learned when you and I got to go do them clinics at his house. And
Right.
I mean, there's so much stuff that I've learned from him that I still do now with my own horses and in my clinics that has helped. And what I've seen too is the more you and him also got around each other, I started noticing your ability to communicate was starting to get stronger and stronger.
Right.
And I still to this day laugh. Some of my best rich one-liners that you have that are just as good as anybody's was you were mic'd up and a guy came in and heeled the steer, and this loop hit behind the steer. And without missing a beat, you were mic'd up and you go, let's have a moment of silence for that heel loop.
There you go.
Till this day, I still steal that one.
Yeah.
When I see someone lay one
Yeah.
right behind one of them, let's have a moment of silence for that heel loop right there.
There you go. Yeah. Oh,
But yeah, Chris he's been amazing. I can't tell you how much stuff that that still sticks with me today from being able to be around that guy and his horsemanship ability.
Mhm. You know, one of the things I learned is you can in in about you start a clinic, and I'm sure you've figured this out by now too. When you start a clinic, I can in about 10 minutes I can tell you who wants to be there, who wants to learn, who whose dad made them come,
Mm-hmm.
and it don't take no time, and you can figure out who's going to actually there to learn, have fun, and get better.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
You can just when you've been around it so much, you get to reading people.
Mm-hmm. Talk a little about your clinics. So you do a lot of clinics now throughout the year,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of healing only clinics as well,
Mm-hmm.
and then also some of the prizes and the ropings that you have along with your clinics. Talk about your clinic schedule that you have throughout the year.
You know, it's I've kind of changed. I mean, there for 3 or 4 years, I had the healers only, which worked really good. I mean, to me, the hardest deal about doing a clinic is if you go do headers and healers. Half the time, if the header misses and the healers, there's nothing worse than going down the arena about 3 times in a row and your heel horse gets running off and not getting to throw your rope. So I sort of thought, you know what, I'll do the healers only, and I have good headers come turn steers, and it worked really. They actually learned, they got better, and it worked good. But also then, and we actually my sponsors, McLean Ford down there helped me with a truck. We give a I think last time we gave a Bronco away. We give a pickup away 1 year, and anybody that come to the clinics, they got to come and come to the finals, and so that worked really good. And then, but there was kind of a void there because when I'd have the finals, people would say, well, they didn't come because they didn't their partner they want to come rope or head or whatever. So the last couple of years, last year I actually done a clinic in Rockdale, Texas, and they called and they had 16 people, 8 headers, 8 healers, and it was kind of a high end deal, and we went and we took give away a coat saddle, a Lazelle for the header and healer. And so I got that started, got to thinking, that worked really good, and people enjoyed it. I mean, because you get it's not they're just your healers, and if you get your partner comes and everybody kind of works at the roping together, and not just So both scenarios is really good, but it's
It's a good way to think outside the box.
right. And I think people, like they really enjoyed, when they come to a clinic like that to rope against 7 headers or 8 headers or 8 healers and have a chance to win a saddle.
Yeah.
And, that clinic, what was nice about it is it was like 5 and below, and, everybody was on the same page. Everybody had a chance. And I figured out also too, when I do the saddle ropings and things, if there's somebody that ropes really good, I'll give them like a handicap system.
Yeah.
We'll do some of it on
Level the
points
playing
and
field.
level the playing field. So everybody's got a chance.
How does a person find your clinics? Do you have a website, Facebook? How do you
Basically
how can you find them?
basically nowadays everything's just on Facebook. Okay. Don't ask me on Facebook. I don't even have it on my phone, but Abby Barnes takes good care of it for me.
Yeah. Well, man, I appreciate you coming on. I've enjoyed being around you. I lived in Llano for a long time. One of the things that I still remember to this day was being able to come out there, and man, the hospitality you guys would always have for us. Young kid, didn't even know me from Adam, let me come stay at the house. And, one of the things that helped change my career was being able to get in the rig, listening to you and speed talk. And, you guys were just, from being able to be around you and then watching you guys dominate, just always being the steady guy that was always one of the nicest guys out there to talk to. And man, I just enjoyed being around you, enjoyed watching your career, and it was fun to sit back and talk about just the explosive, I mean, just game changing. When you're able to watch that in real life and then watch it on TV and just be able to see in real time you guys change the game, it was phenomenal.
Well, I appreciate it, and it was always good having you down there open. But now I never see anybody. That's the thing about down there in Atlanta was I'm down there a lot by myself, and but it's I still like Llano. It's a good spot.
Well, it was the spot.
Yeah,
I remember California, then Arizona, and then it seemed like once Houston started having team roping, San Antonio started having team roping, Well, Lano was the spot. You and T was there. Then Speed moved there. Then T was there, or Tyler was there, and then that's when all the team ropers would all come between them 4 places. And then Rod lived there, Rod Lyman, and then so that was the spot where, you know, between Austin, between San Angelo, it was the hub where everyone team roped. It was all right there for the longest time.
We was talking about it on the way up here a while ago. I remember, never forget, Kyle Lockett lived with me in the winter every year. Right after he would come after Denver, and he'd leave after Austin. And he drove around in the truck one morning, probably 10:30 or 11, and he would tell everybody, we're having a jackpot at Rich's at 3 or 4, and we had 80 teams that afternoon. Yeah. I mean, just people just showed up and roped. I mean, there was that many people. It'd be like, you know, what Steamville is nowadays.
Yeah, that was the spot. And then the eating spot, you had Cooper's.
Yeah, you could figure everything you needed to about 5 in the afternoon there.
Yeah. Well, man, I appreciate you coming on, buddy.
You betcha.
It was good
Thank you.
talking to you.
It was fun.